Good evening. I wanted to take some time tonight and make a brief video about my typical, my setup that I use for work, and the setup I generally use at home. I have been using a Windows setup for the last couple videos, but it has been my first time back in Windows for a bit. I needed to for some audio stuff I was going to be working on, just to have programs that I'm a little bit more familiar and used to. But this is typically what I use. I'm going to go through some of the tools. So I wanted to start by talking about kind of the reasons for a lot of these choices and why I use the things that I do. Most of this, some of this stuff is more recent. Most of it is stuff I've been using for years now, on and off, though for the past 2 years I've been pretty much back to generally something like this setup. So things that are important for me for how I set up my work environment. The first one is that I want something very deliberate. And what I mean by that is not necessarily customizable, though that usually goes with it. But I want everything that I use and everything on my screen at any time and all of my hotkeys and everything to be deliberate choices. Things that I wanted and that I picked, not things that were pushed on me as a default or as something that I can't easily change. So that's the first thing, is I value something deliberate. The next one is simplicity, and I don't mean easiness here. I mean simple. And by simple, I mean no extra stuff there. No extra complexity to get anything done. Just everything that I need, and not a whole lot more. The next one is speed. I like to be able to work quickly and to switch between things quickly and to get the things that I need to get to up and in front of me very quickly. I think that speed's really important. I've heard a lot of people downplay it when it comes to programming and software, especially when you talk about things like Vim or stuff like that. But I think speed's really important. You do spend most of your time thinking, but the time you spend doing things, if things are faster to do, they become more likely that you're going to do that thing. If something is slow and kind of a pain to do, you're going to be less likely to use that option, even though it's there. You're going to kind of stick to the fastest way to do things. So if you make the good way to do things fast, you're going to be more likely to do the good thing. And if you make kind of a worse way fast, you're gonna keep doing things the wrong way. Sorry, let me change that wallpaper back. We'll get to that. So the next thing, and this one is one I don't hear mentioned too often when people are talking about their desktop setups or when people are talking about their workflow, is beauty. I like things that look good. I like my desktop and my tools to look nice. It makes it more pleasant to work in them, and it makes me enjoy my whole day a lot more if things look nice. I do think that one, as with speed, is often downplayed or dismissed as somebody just using something fancy or flashy just to show off or for the sake of doing it. But I think there's value in things looking nice, and you enjoying and liking the thing that you work with. So that is something that's another thing that's really important to me. The next thing is I don't want distractions. So while I'm working, I don't want a bunch of notifications popping up telling me, that I need to check some Facebook posts, or telling me that, I've updates to apply, or telling me anything like that. I also don't like a lot of buttons on my taskbar enticing me to run other applications and to go do something else with my time, and kind of distracting me from what I'm trying to focus in on. So I try to get a setup that doesn't have a lot of those distractions. Next one is personalization. So I do set something up that is personal to me. So I don't set up my desktop or my development environment to be something that is the best idea for everybody doing software, or the best hotkeys for everybody, or anything like that. I set one up that's specific to me and the work that I do. And I choose tools that let me do that. I think that there's a inclination to stick with something standard, or use something that is the way that everybody else is doing it. And that can be okay sometimes. A lot of times the popular thing is the good thing. That's why it's popular. But I think that you should make choices around what you like to do, not always around what is the most normal setup, but something that kind of adapts to the way you like to work and the way you like to think about things. So that's another thing I put some priority on. And the next one, especially important with the tools I'm going to be talking about, is some level of finalization. So I do change things as time goes on. I'll change distributions. I'll change desktop environments. I'll change some little things about my tools. I'll add plugins to NeoVim or to things like that now and then, but not a lot. I don't constantly change my config files. I don't constantly mess around and change the look and feel of things. That can be a fun hole to go down, but eventually it does become a distraction. So I do try to get things somewhat finalized to the way I like them, and then I leave them alone until I hit some friction where I feel like something needs to change, that I'm kind of wasting too much time on something, or something that I've been doing a lot is not right at hand and not easy for me to do. And that's when I make changes. I try not to do it for the sake of it. If I'm going to play around with different things and try different editors or desktop environments, I have a certain time in the evening set aside to do that. It's kind of something I do at the end of the evening when I'm relaxing. I don't do that during the hours that I'm working on projects and things. At least most of the time I don't. I try not to. So that's kind of what's driving all this. So what's in front of you, you might have seen, especially lately, it's been getting a lot of press, and that's part of why I ended up where I ended up, but not entirely. I did end up here right before it really blew up, which is interesting, just kind of the way things happen a lot of the time. Some of these things I've been using for a long time. But this first part I'm going to talk about is this that's been in front of us the whole time I've been recording this video, which is Hyprland. This is the desktop environment I use. I do use it on a Linux distribution called Arch, but the Arch part of it is not terribly important to this video. The main reason that I use Arch is because I just want to install this desktop environment, and other distros tend to ship with some other really heavier desktop environments and a lot of stuff running in the background that I don't necessarily want or need. And using a minimal distribution like this lets me start off with kind of an more empty operating system and just put the stuff that I'm going to use. So before I was using Hyprland with Ubuntu, but it actually was harder to get it to work under Ubuntu, believe it or not. And also, as I said, there was always kind of extra stuff running in the background that I really wasn't using in this workflow, and it was kind of hard to pare it down. So it was easier to start from scratch and build up from here. Depending on who's watching this and why, Arch is not a terribly beginner-friendly distribution, so with all of this is not a recommendation of how you should work necessarily. You can take some ideas from here. You might want to check this out, some of this stuff, and if you do, or if you're interested in this, leave a comment on the video. I can go more in depth on any of this if you want. But this desktop environment is Hyprland, and what may be different, depending on, again, who's watching at this point. I haven't done a lot to promote this channel, so I know I have a pretty small audience. It is a tiling window manager, and it is a Hyprland is just the window manager, but it involves a lot of other tools and pieces typically that kind of build it a little bit more into a desktop environment. So I'm kind of using those interchangeably because while Hyprland is just a window manager, people use the same stack of tools to kind of build a minimal desktop environment. So what a tiling window manager means is that when I open a program, so if I open a terminal here, which I do have bound to a hotkey, when I first open this terminal, it takes up the whole screen. And if I open another window, like if I open a browser, this will take up the other half of the screen. And I cannot move these windows in the traditional way. I can kind of shift them around, but they don't float on top of each other. They don't stack on top of each other. They always kind of split this way. Just to show you terminals to keep this a little bit easier. If I open a second one, we see that same split. If I open a third one, it's going to split again. If I open a fourth one, it'll keep splitting. As far as where it splits in Hyprland, it actually has to do with where my mouse is. So right now, you see when I did that, it opened to the right. The reason it opened to the right, though, is that my mouse is over this window on the right side. So it says I want to split there. If I wanted to open another bottom one over here, if I had my mouse over here and opened, it would open there. So that is a bit different than some tiling window managers, but that's how this one works. To close a window, I push window key Q, and that will close the current window. Well, as I do move my mouse around, typically in Hyprland we don't use the mouse a whole lot, but if I do use my mouse, you can see it's switching the active window as I move it around. I don't need to click or anything, it just does that. So I've set up that I can use hotkeys to move around these windows. So I can use H, J, K, and L to move left, down, up, and right respectively. And I can use that to navigate. And you'll see the opposite kind of happening here too, that the mouse is moving when I use the keyboard navigation as well. So that's kind of a two-way thing happening there between the keyboard navigation or mouse. But that's how I move between windows. And like I said, the big thing with the tiling window manager is my windows don't stack on top of each other. They just kind of split up to take up the screen until I'm done with them. If I get too many and I don't have any room anymore for my windows, I can push window key and a number to go to a new workspace, and I can open stuff there. And then I can go back to my previous workspaces. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit lost here because I got a few workspaces on the other monitor. With window key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. I also have up here that I can switch between workspaces using these. So this does also let me switch by using that guy right there. So this up here also both shows what workspace I'm on. I'm on the third one right here, and lets me switch between them. So let's close these with Window key Q. And let's go over to workspace 1, just because that'll be easier for me to keep track of. All right. So that is the way tiling works. Now, when I'm tiling, well, actually, we'll get to there in a moment. So the next thing you'll notice on my screen is up top here, there is this bar that has that workspace switcher I was talking about and has some other stuff up here. This shows the CPU usage, the disk usage, and my RAM usage. And over here it shows my speaker and microphone volumes. It shows the network I'm connected to, so my home network, FBI surveillance fan. And then over here I have the date and time. This date and time format is what I picked up from somebody just today, the Primogen. And this shows the time and it just shows the day. I only show the day and the time because I know what year it is, so I don't need the year shown, and I know what month it is most of the time. So I really only need to know what day it is. So I just need to know it's the 3rd, and it's 11:07 right now. And then this is the system tray. Right now it's showing OBS. If I had anything else that was system tray, it'd be showing there. And then this is the alert thing, and I can click on that to show alerts. And that's about it. This bar is all customized, so it is all configured to look the way that I want, to only have the information I want. The little kind of fine black gradient there with the curves and the little tabs coming down is all stuff that I set up to be the way that I like it to look. So this is, again, called Waybar. It's something people typically install with Hyprland, just to have a little bit of information up there up top. I think the clock is really the most important thing up there, to be honest. But since we're taking up some horizontal space, we might as well put some of these other things just for some additional information. So that's Waybar. Next thing, now I was opening terminals with Window key T and browsers with Window key B, and I do have hotkeys for all my common apps, but I can open anything at all by Window key space, and that will open this little launcher. This is like the start menu. It'll just show if you're used to Windows, so this will just show all the programs. I can arrow through them, or I can start typing part of something so that it'll know what to open. And then if I push enter, it will open the thing. Okay. Next thing is if I have a window I want to move it to a new workspace, I can just push Control, Window, and a workspace number, and it'll move it over there. So we can move it over there to workspace 9, and if I want that, that'll work. So there's 1 and 9, and I can just switch between workspaces like that if I want. Okay. So that's basically the way the Hyprland works with the layout. Next thing, sorry, a little bit more here on Hyprland. The moving and resizing. So if I have 2 of these windows open, I am just using terminals here, and you'll see people demo terminals a lot on Hyprland. Don't let that make you think that this is only for doing work in terminals. You can open VS Code here, you can open IntelliJ, whatever you like, whatever you're used to using. But to resize, I'm using terminals because they're a little bit easier to look at and to explain things. To resize, I can go to this gap between the 2 windows and just left click and pull this over. And with the terminals, what's nice is as I'm resizing, you can see it's telling me how many cells it's taking up, and that is how many characters are going to fit in each one. So I can do that if I want. Like maybe I'm going to open my editor here and I just want a little terminal over here, and then that'll kind of stay there with the way it does splits. So then I could have one down here, could resize that down a little bit, and maybe that's the layout I want for doing my work. Maybe I want IntelliJ over here if you're a Java developer, more used to that stuff. We'll get to editors soon. I don't tend to use IntelliJ or VS Code, but I understand that most people do. So that is how I manage windows. Again, window key Q is how I close the windows. Next thing we can do, and this works with any kind of window, even if it's an application that doesn't normally support this, is we can full screen any window by window key F, and that will make it take up the whole screen. So I don't see that bar anymore, and I just have a terminal on my whole screen here, or whatever application I'm using. And then window key F takes me back to not full screen. So that even goes for apps that don't normally do full screen. So if I open IntelliJ again here, this normally is not an app that supports full screen, but if I push window key F, it will give me a full screen IntelliJ, which can be nice sometimes. No distractions, no start menu down there. You can't even see what time it is. You can just get your stay focused in on your work. So that can be nice sometimes. So go ahead and close that. Next thing, I don't use this, but if you do need to, you can do floating windows. If you push on mine, I have it set up for window key O, it will turn it into a floating window. And now I do have windows that float. So I can have two of these and make them both floating. And then if I hold window key, I can drag them around, and I can have these overlapping windows like what you're used to. Window key right click lets me resize it. Window key left click lets me move it around. So I can move these and kind of have that overlapping window experience if I want to, but I don't tend to use this, but it is something that's there. Some people set up their Hyprland to default to floating windows. They don't use it as a tiling window manager because they like how nice it looks and how everything opens, but they don't. They're not quite bought into that. Window key O again puts it back in tiling mode. So that's the way I use things. Next stuff here is for locking my screen. Hopefully this will show when I do the screen lock. I can push window key W, and I will get a lock screen. It'll prompt me to put in my password to unlock. So that's how the lock screen works. Lock screen does have another program associated with it that takes care of the idle timeout. So if I'm locked, or if I'm way too long, it'll automatically lock. If I'm away even longer, it'll turn off the monitors so that I get that normal kind of experience we're used to with that. I'm not going to do this because this will kill things, but if I push window key X, it will log me out of the whole session and take me back to the user login screen. So it'll close all my apps and log me out of Hyprland. Next two keys for Hyprland is just wallpaper rotation. So if I want to go through my wallpapers, close this so we can see the wallpaper a little bit better, I can hit window key Y or U to rotate through, and I got this nice little effect that goes for when I change the wallpapers. Just looks nice. If I don't, they will automatically rotate every 10 minutes or something like that. But as with everything, that's all configurable, and that's just the way I have it set up. So that is basically the desktop environment. For browser, I do use Firefox. I think you've probably seen that in previous videos if you've been watching. I use Firefox because I don't really like Google tracking everything I do and keeping all my data, building a profile on me. I still use YouTube. I use Google plenty. It's hard to get away from it entirely, but for the browser stuff, I do like Firefox. The other reason I like Firefox is if you're doing web development, Firefox tends to be a pretty good minimum default. If your page works in Firefox, it'll probably work in Chrome as well, and Safari. Chrome is not really a good baseline default. Chrome tends to be bleeding edge, so there's plenty of stuff that'll work in Chrome, And if you're developing there, and then later you go to do cross-browser testing, you will be surprised to find out that very new things may work in Chrome and not in Firefox. So it also is handy for that reason. There's been a lot of drama you can read about online elsewhere or watch elsewhere around Mozilla and some stuff with privacy with Mozilla. I'm aware of that. I have not, the details of it I'm not as concerned about, and two, I have not found a substitute browser that I'm happy with yet. I just haven't had time to. So I may be switching soon due to some stuff with Mozilla. Waiting a little bit to see how that shakes out and trying to find another browser. I did use Vivaldi for a little bit, but didn't quite like that one. All right, so that is the desktop environment that I use during working on projects and software. Next thing is NeoVim. As with the Hyprland part here, I'm not going to try not to do too deep of a dive or instructions on how to use or set it up, just showing you kind of how I work. I can do a deeper dive on any of these if there's interest in it, but for now I just kind of want to give an overview of everything that I use right now. So if I open a terminal and then go to one of our project directories, I can type Vim, and that will take me into NeoVim. NeoVim is a Vim distribution. It's a NeoVim distribution, more specifically. And what that means is it is a set of default config files with some good defaults and some good plugins so that you have a pretty comprehensive editor experience out of the box. I do have some customizations that I do to NeoVim beyond what they already do. Just some extra hotkeys that I like and some turn off some things I don't like that they do, etc. But I think NeoVim is a really good baseline for anybody that's starting off with Vim. If you are not familiar with Vim or NeoVim, it is a terminal-based editor, and most notably, it is a modal editor. And what a modal editor is when I'm in editing a file here. Okay, this is not the file I want to work with here. Let's just pick something here. All right, so when I'm in a file editing it, by default it is in what's called normal mode. And in normal mode, if I type keys on the keyboard, they don't type into the editor. The keys are used for moving around and taking action kind of on the line that I'm on or the text that I'm on, things like that. So by default, I'm not editing the file, I'm moving around it. Most notably, the first thing everybody, well, not most notably, but definitely the first thing everybody learns is you can use HJKL to kind of move around the file kind of in a dumb way. You can also use Control D and U to page up and page down. You can use W to move a word at a time, B to move a word back at a time, $, to go to the end of the line, caret to go to the beginning of the line, 0 to go to the real beginning of the line. And a bunch of other things. If I'm on a symbol here, if I hit %, it'll take me to the matching one, and I can jump between those. There's a bunch of other things I can do as far as movement. There's a lot here I can do as far as actions. So YY will copy the current line to the clipboard, and P will paste it. So I can do that. I can do copying and pasting. V puts me in visual mode where I can highlight some stuff and then do something with it. I could, indent it or copy it or whatever. And a lot of neat things like that. A lot of neat things that you can't easily do in a non-modal editor like Visual Studio Code. So again, not going to get too much into the details of how to use Vim and everything, at least in this video. But just some examples of some things you can do here that you can't do elsewhere. is, say we want to change this A01.1 to B02.2. Now, in Visual Studio Code, you would grab your mouse and go highlight this, and then maybe try to get it highlighted exactly what you want, and then maybe push the delete key, and then do that. Or maybe if you're a little bit more keyboard-centric, you'd kind of arrow down here, get over here, control arrow to select this stuff, and then delete it and then start typing. In a modal editor in NeoVim, I can just do from anywhere before it, as long as it's the next string. If I type CI quote, that is change the thing in quotes. That will jump to the next thing in quotes, clear it, and put me into insert mode so I can start typing a new thing. So now I can start typing B02.2. And then I can push escape to go back into normal mode. I'm going to push U to undo that. Okay. And that's that. There's a lot I can do here with navigation. I can also do stuff with marks here. So if I type MA, it will put a bookmark called A there, and then wherever I'm at, I can hit apostrophe A, and it'll jump me back to that. So I can make all the marks I want. MB for a mark called B. I can go to A, go to B, go to A, go to B. So it's just and DM to delete the marks for what I have set up. Most of these are pretty standard, but there's a lot of things like that that I can do. We can record macros. So if I have something I'm doing a lot, I can just take capital Q, or sorry, that's to play it back. I can hit QQ to start recording a macro, do some things, which what we're doing in normal mode is all discrete actions. So move over 2 words, change something, and then as soon as I'm done, I can hit Q again to say that I'm done recording, and then I can hit capital Q and play all that back on a different line. So that's another handy thing that I can do. So there's a lot you can do with Vim and modal editors, and eventually find yourself a lot quicker. If I want to jump somewhere and I can see what it is, if I know the line number, I can just type the line number and type GG, and it'll take me there. So if I type 50 GG, it'll put me on line 50. Also, I can type colon and a number, and that'll take me there too. So if I see maybe I got an error message saying 72, I can do that to jump there. We can also search to move to places. So if I search for exact code and hit enter, it'll put me on the first occurrence there. And now that I have that search term loaded, if I hit N, it'll take me to the next one, capital N to go back. So I can go through these very quickly. GG to go to the top of the file, capital G to go to the end. Like I said, a bunch of stuff like that. I kind of don't want to get into a full Vim tutorial, but it's just very quick for me to move around, very quick for me to edit code without thinking about it too much, and a lot of really powerful things that you can do in terms of quickly orchestrating things without having to think a whole lot, without having to write a big script file, or having to write a big thing about what I want to do when I have a big operation to do. It lets me just kind of record and play things back without thinking, move around the file very quickly without a lot of deliberate thought about how to do that. Things become really quick. Okay, so some other stuff in NeoVim, in LazyVim specifically. If I want to open a different file, I hit space, and this opens a file picker. I can arrow through these, and you see a little preview thing on the left, or I can hit enter on one. But I can also start typing up top, and it'll just narrow down those files, and then I just hit enter when I get the one I want. Okay, so that's a really neat way to go through files. It's also very fast. Even if you have a huge project with hundreds of files, it will search very quickly. So really neat way to be able to jump between files. Next thing is, you may notice, you may be uncomfortable if you're a VS Code, Sublime, or anything else pretty much user, with the fact there's no file tree being shown here showing my project. Most of the time, you don't actually need that. You feel like you do. Like you want to constantly see the files in your project, but most of the time you don't need to. But sometimes you do need to. Sometimes it is useful. So if I hit space E, that will open this little thing, and I can see the tree there while I'm working, and then I can just open files by going through this tree here and open files that way, and I can do this all with the keyboard. Just H and L moves me between these this area here and this area over here, and I can push space E to hide it again. And that is also a thing that we can filter as well. So that's the tree. Next, tab navigation. Now that I have all these open, you can see there's a little tab bar across the top. Technically it is a buffer bar. Anybody that is a big Vim user that's watching this will scream at me for calling them tabs, but for how I have them set up, how they work, they're basically tabs. And the way I can move between tabs is just capital H when I'm in normal mode. Just capital H moves me left a tab, and L moves me forward a tab. So real easy to move between tabs that way. Okay. Next thing on marks, actually I did want to mention this. On marks, if I set a bookmark with a capital letter, so if I make a capital A bookmark, that's called a global bookmark. Now normally bookmarks are local, so if I tell it to go to mark lowercase a, that's only going to work, it's only going to look at the marks in the file that I've opened, so only in this token parsing file. Since it's capital though, capital is a global bookmark. That means no matter what file I've opened, if I go apostrophe capital A, it will take me to that, even if that means switching back to a file. So those can be really handy too. All right, what else did I have here? LSP integration. So LazyVim does have full LSP integration. If you don't know what an LSP is, that is a language server. Well, LSP is actually language server protocol. So the thing is actually a language server. And what that is for any of your modern editors, Visual Studio Code, IntelliJ not so much, but most of your modern editors, the way that they know how to autocomplete and the way they know how to let you look up what function you're in or anything like that works using a technology called language server protocol, or with language servers to provide this stuff. So NeoVim does have this, so that means I do get my autocomplete. So if I go down here and I type anything, you can see I get these little autocompletes here. I also have the hover information. So in VS Code, you know, if you hover over something, you can see some information on it. We have that, but it's keyboard driven, so if I hit capital K while on a word, it'll show me a little hover thing telling me what that is. So if I hit there, and let's look at into it, or it'll show me a little popover thing showing me the documentation for that. So with that I have that. I also have, if I have errors in the file, it'll pop up and show me that I need to fix that error. So if you have not seen NeoVim with an LSP turned on without all these kind of bells, Vim has a reputation for being a very simple editor that maybe isn't as full-featured as the IDE you're using, doesn't have all the niceties, but that's not the case. Modern NeoVim setups definitely have all of that stuff you have in your editor. You know, all the big global find and replaces, all the LSP stuff, and autocomplete and error checking and a whole lot more. The LSP integration is a big deal. Mark's already talked about. Next thing I want to talk about is space mode. So this is something that I know at least one person watching this uses Helix. And it's not really a mode, but Helix calls it space mode. But if I hit space, I have a lot of actions under space, and it'll pop up this little thing here. Let me see if I can get my face out of the way. Okay, so if I push space here, it will show a little menu. This will time out eventually, but it'll show me all the different kind of sub-menus I can get into to customize things. So I want to go through some of those just to show even more of the features that are available in this. So the first one I want to talk about under here is code actions. So if I am on, the code menu. So if I'm on something, I can hit space, C, and that takes me to these. And if I hit A, that shows code actions. And these are different things that I can do to this recommended by the LSP. So I can pick one of these and do that. So this is for stuff like inlining variables. So let me see if I can find a variable to inline here. Sure. So this expected, if I wanted to inline this variable instead of having it up there, I just want to put this vector right here. If I hit space, C, A, there's inline macro. And, that's not quite what I was after. Let's try here. C, A. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but anyway, normally it would give me inline variable and some other choices there, just some Rust stuff. What else? So there's some other code actions there. If I go to that code menu, there's LSP info. So if I hit space CL, that will, that's not actually context sensitive. It'll show me all of the LSPs, which ones are running. So right now Copilot and the Rust Analyzer are running, and that'll show me all the options that are going on. And it will show me all of the other LSPs, so all the other language support I have in here. So I have Clang and Docker and all kinds of extra stuff here, F# and Flow and other stuff. Some of these X'd out ones are ones that are available that I don't have installed and enabled, but this hopefully gives you an idea of how many languages are supported in NeoVim with language servers that we can install. Specifically with LazyVim, we can install these just with a click. So that's some of the stuff under the code menu that just lets me do different things related to code. I can hit M for Mason. This is what lets me install new things. So if I want to support some new languages, I can do that. If I hit code space CS, that will show on the left here this little symbol window, which lets me navigate my file with a little outline. So this lets me jump between functions quickly by just using that. So if I hit that again, that'll hide them. So there's a lot of stuff here. We got rename there as well. That's probably actually the one that I use the most. So if we're here and we're like, I want to rename that variable from input, I can just do space CR and give this a new name. So we could call it, I don't know, just input2 for now. And that will rename it, and that does the LSP rename. So it did rename it down here as well. And I can just hit U to undo. So code menu gives a bunch of stuff for, all the stuff you kind of would expect from kind of your LSP interactions. What else did I want to talk about in LazyVim? Space B. Space B is buffers. This is kind of in the way I have this set up. It's kind of the tabs. So space B and then 0 or 1 or 2, that's another way to jump between. But mostly what I use here is space B, and then one of these delete keys. So if I want to close everything but the tab that I'm on, I can do space B O, and that'll close all the other tabs. Let's get some more open again. Space B, that's off, and I just want to close the other tabs. We can close all the ones to the left with space BL, or right with space BR, or space BD to close the current one. So space BD closes the current tab. All right. So that's the kind of tab management stuff there in terms of closing the tab. Next is splits. So if I am working, some people use these. I don't tend to use this a whole lot, but when I do need it, it's handy to have. And that is to split the window vertically or sometimes horizontally, usually vertically. So if we do space W, that'll take us into the window menu, and then I can do a vertical split with V. So space WV gives me this vertical split. And then if I want to open a different file here, I can just go down, and there, now we have two different files open. I can also have the same file open on these two tabs, or on these two splits. And notice the tabs here, or buffers, are distinct from the two different splits I have here. And this is kind of what makes them not tabs. They are markers for a buffer. So if I click between these two, I could navigate with my keyboard, but just to show you, if I click between these two, you'll see that tab switching, and the tabs are all over the left. So it's kind of two separate things. This is the buffer line, and these are just two views that I have. So once so I can work this way and kind of have, look at two different files while I'm working on them. And once I'm done, I can either type :Q to close this, or I can just, I think, hit space W, V. Oh, no, that just opens another split. So we're going to hit :Q to close it. So :Q, always, eventually it'll exit Vim, but in the case of multiple windows, it's going to just close the window that's open. Once we're down to just one window, it'll exit the whole application. All right. Next two things. These are really cool. So first one is tests. There is a really neat test integration here that I make heavy use of, which is I am not an advocate of test-driven development at all. I do think unit tests or integration tests, more often integration tests, are useful for certain kinds of applications that you're writing. They don't make a lot of sense for anything UI heavy. Anybody that's tried to do them can attest to that. I don't really believe in UI integration tests, even using things like Puppeteer and all that to control Chrome. I don't think that those kind of tests are terribly useful. I also don't like tests where you're doing so much mocking that you're testing not a very realistic picture of your code. So I do tend to prefer integration tests, and I tend to prefer testing functions that have complexity where it makes sense to test them versus trying to do 100% code coverage and just kind of doing a kind of religious exercise of unit tests instead of actually trying to test what you're writing. But I do find myself writing a lot more tests now for two reasons. One, I primarily write in Rust, which lets me put the tests right in the file, right next to the function, so they're nice and local. I like that a lot, without paying a compile time cost for them either. Without paying also them being compiled in. They're only there when I do test builds. So the cool thing with NeoVim is that I can also push space T to get into the test menu and W for watch. And what this will do is you see that green check mark there. It's on the test function, and it is also at the top of the file. And that green check mark at the top of the file tells me all the tests that are in this file are passing. And then, if I go change things, so I could, more often I'd be changing stuff in the code to break this, but if I broke this test, so say I changed stuff up in the code that broke it, that would do this too, but I'm going to change the test itself to break it because it's the same thing. But if I do anything in the file that breaks this, and then save, it'll tell me right away that I broke it, and it'll show me right where, which assertion failed and everything. So I don't have to do anything to rerun the test. They're just kind of passively there. And if I break it, it will change to an X. It kind of marks the tab red. You can see the X at the top. We get this little thing in the bottom window telling me that'll navigate me right there until I fix it. So if we undo and save, now it's back to working. But that lets me have unit tests that are kind of always there, always watching and being run and kept up to date without me having to take the deliberate step of rerunning unit tests every time and having to keep track of these things. So, yeah, space TW watches the file for tests, and it just reruns any test in the file. Anytime you make changes and save the file, it'll rerun the tests in the file without you having to do anything. And it'll find out real quick if you broke something. So that test integration is the best test integration I've ever had in an editor, paired with the fact that Rust lets us put tests right in the file and keep them local to the thing we're working on. I think it's great. I think it's really useful. Those two things kind of paired together, and it's just an experience, like I said, it doesn't really match anything I've had with any IDE for tests. Otherwise, testing seems to be a very deliberate action where I have to go out of my way to run the tests and remember to run the tests and go do all that stuff. So, or kind of take myself out of context of the code too while I'm working on it. Like, since this is here, what's great is while I'm editing the code, if I do break it up here, so we can break it up here just to show you. So let's just change this, and I can see the test is that I broke the test, and it hasn't taken me out of what I'm doing. I'm still right on the line that I was working on, and I can just undo that and save, and now the test is passing and the little thing went away, and there's no more red at the top of my tab. So that is what I mean, and that kind of goes with the philosophy I talked about a bit at the beginning there, which is just this idea of things being fast, simple, and I guess I didn't mention it, but not taking me out of context of what I'm doing. I don't like flipping around between things when I don't have to. I don't like being, I don't like getting lost as I'm browsing around my code. So stuff like that helps. The same thing with marks. Marks help me a lot. That is the integrated testing. Next thing that I really love, and most of your IDEs have this, but just to show that it is there, let's go to main. That I do have a full-blown debugger built in here. So this is using a plugin called DEP that comes with LazyVim, and the LLDB debugger, I believe it's called. So what this means is I get full kind of IDE debugging. So if I'm going to run this program, this is the main function, so this is where it starts. I know not everybody knows Rust that's maybe watching this, but you don't need to for what I'm talking about here. So I can set a breakpoint, so I can say, as soon as that's done running, right here I want you to run this program and stop when you get here, and I want to look at variables and stuff. So to do that, we're going to make a breakpoint. So I hit space, D, B. And you see the little target showed up in the margin there, and that means I have a breakpoint there. Now that breakpoint's there, I can start my debug session, and it'll start running the program and stop as soon as it hits the breakpoint. I can put more down here too, and it'll stop when it hits those as well, as soon as I continue. So to start debugging, I'm going to hit space, D, and then C for run continue. It's going to pop up and show me a bunch of different ways it could start my program. Because it's Rust, I have a lot of choices here. But we're just going to do this one. And it will run the program. And it stopped at my breakpoint. Now you see all this stuff appeared on my screen. So I'm going to use the mouse here just to kind of show. But it's showing these local, all the variables here. It's showing where my breakpoints are. It is showing the current call stack. It's showing the output window. It is showing an output window for the debugger. And there's a bunch of little buttons here for continuing, stopping, everything like that. If I go over here, I can look at variables that are currently loaded. And I can hit, I believe, enter to expand those. Well, sometimes there's nothing to expand there. I didn't stop at a very interesting point. Yeah, we don't have a whole lot to look at just now. But I can look at my variables here if there was much interesting to look at. I can look at the call stack here to see how this all got called. Right now we're in main, so there is still a call stack here, and that's just because Rust kind of does a lot of stuff before main. I can also, and this is really cool here, as well as looking at the variable values up here, we can put expressions here, and it will evaluate them, and every time it hits a breakpoint, it'll reevaluate and show us the way things are. So I can put something here like model dot term map dot len. This one should work. On Rust, it might be picky about that. Might be picky about stuff that isn't a that has a function call in it. So we're going to delete that, and we're going to say, well, I'll just do something simple here. 10 plus 10, and you know, but I could refer to stuff that is current locals for that. I think we can just do model for now, and that'll just show the model. Or if I do model dot category map, that will show that. So it'll show me like the size and currently while I'm on the breakpoint, and then as we continue, it'll evaluate those, and I can kind of see what's happening. Now that we're on a breakpoint, the program is kind of paused, and we're looking at it kind of frozen in time at this point, but we can do all the normal stuff that you'd be used to if you're used to using like an interactive debugger like this. So they're all under the debug menu, so if we do space D O, capital O, it'll do step over. So I can do that to kind of step through this, see how it's going, and go one step at a time. And I can also use these buttons down here if I'm going to use my mouse, and that'll do step over as well, and I can see it kind of go through. And we can look at things changing and look at things as we go. If I hit play, it will just continue, and it finished. So that's that, because I only had the one breakpoint. Let's get it started again. So instead of tabbing down here, I can also just put the numbers. So I can put 9. That's the one I want. And it'll start back up again and stop the breakpoint. So now we're on the breakpoint again, and we can talk a little bit more about this. But I think that's actually basically everything. But that's just to show, even though it's this weird terminal-based editor, I still have all this stuff you're used to. Another thing I can do here, instead of continuing, if I just am like, I just want to just kill the program, don't continue running. If I do space D T, it'll terminate. and it'll just stop the program where it's at. So that's how I do debugging, testing. That's some of the stuff in NeoVim. That's a little bit about my workflow and kind of how I work on things. Most of the time, excuse me, most of the time I'm working on a program and I will have another terminal open. Oh, that is not on the right side, so we're going to move it over here. I'll have another terminal open, and in this terminal I'll kind of be doing something here, usually like testing. So I'll just go between these and I'll just do something here. We need to get in the same folder. And, you know, I'll kind of be doing my builds over here or running it over here to kind of look at the output. Yeah, that's kind of, this is what I use for coding, and that is basically the workflow that I use with LazyVim. Just to say, everything else does still work in Arch, so you can still run code if you want to. Space code. I already showed you IntelliJ running, but Visual Studio Code does run, and you know, or if you like Zed runs. I kind of like Zed, but really I only use NeoVim, but that is just because I've gotten really used to it. I'm very fast with it. Okay. Yeah, this has already been a long video. I got a couple more things I wanted to talk about before I wrap up, though. Also in this, some terminal programs that I use that are handy, other than kind of the normal ones everybody's used to, Git and whatever. So this is the weird stuff. So my prompt here, where it has this extra information here, this Git information, and it shows the time of the current prompt. And as I go on, it'll show the time that I ran that thing. All that prompt customization, this cool color here and everything, is handled by a program called Starship. So if you're interested, you can look into that. But that lets me make a terminal prompt that gives me a little bit of additional information on my prompt, so that right now it's telling me I'm on a main branch in this repository, and the exclamation point is telling me that I have things that are not committed. So I like having that extra info, and I like having a prompt that looks nice, so I use Starship to get that done. Next one, you've actually already seen me use, is Zoxide. And Zoxide is a kind of replacement for CD that uses fuzzy finding. So if I just type Z, all my Zoxide stuff is just Z. So Z puts me in my home folder. Now, under my home folder, I have a folder called Projects. And in there, if you look, there's a few different things here right now. These are just projects I'm currently working with. This web test, script engine. So if you're used to using LS and CD, a lot of times you probably get used to this thing where you start off at home and then you're like, okay, let's go into my projects folder. What was that folder called? LS. Okay, I want to go to web test. All right, now CD to web test. Web test. Maybe you're smart enough to use tab completion like I did there. But then finally you're in the right folder. And then you're like, oh, and then you're working on that, and then you need to go somewhere else. And then you're CDing back and LSing again, and kind of using a bunch of CDs and LSs to figure out where you want to be. The cool thing about Zoxide is Zoxide replaces that with a fuzzy find CD. So no matter where I am, so that web test folder, right? We know it's called web test. We don't know where it is, but say I'm just in the home folder. So actually we can just open a new folder, right? And so I just got here, and I know I want to get to web test, and I'm like, oh, I got to navigate all the way to it. I don't have to do that. I can just type Z web test, and it'll put me right in that folder, even though it is under projects. It looks for the last thing that is named like what you said. What's cool about that is, even if I don't remember it's called web test, if we go back to home, I can just type Z web, and that'll put me there. So Z anything will put me to the folder that contains that word that is the last thing I was working on, kind of called that. So Zoxide, good replacement for CD, lets me jump around between folders a lot quicker than trying to do this CDLS dance and going back and forth with that. So highly recommend that if you're on a not Windows machine where you can use this stuff. Most of this stuff is Linux or sometimes Mac, but anyway, that's Zoxide. That helps me stay sane moving around between folders in the terminal without having to deal with a lot of, like I said, the LSCD dance. So next one I have is EZA, EZA. And that is just a replacement for LS that just makes things look a little bit nicer. So it just color codes my things and makes them show up a little bit nicer. It's just a LS replacement. It's a drop-in replacement that just has nicer coloring and some nicer defaults. Next one is a program called Bat or Batcat, and it's just a cat replacement. So if I do cat site CSS, I get, instead of it just printing it out in plain old text, I get this nice syntax highlighted thing of the file printed to the terminal. So if I want to just look at a file, what's in a file, I can just type cat in the file name and it'll show me the file. And if the file is big, let me go back to something big. Should be using Z for that again. But let's see here. All right. Let's cat this heading parser. So if it's something big, it also automatically gives me paging. So instead of sending me right back to the terminal, it gives me this thing where I can push up and down and kind of scroll through the file. As soon as I'm done looking at it, I can just hit Q and it'll go back to the thing. So that's another neat thing about Batcat. I think that's it. I also use ripgrep, but I mostly use that in an integrated way with NeoVim. But even if I'm out here on the shell and I'm in some folder and I want to know all the files that have let's say info in them, I can type RG and then info, and that will show me all the files that have info in them. So this model file, rules parser, and main, and it shows me all the line numbers for them. So, and it is very fast. So even if you use it on a giant folder full of a bunch of files, ripgrep is extremely fast. It is crazy how fast it is. It does support regular expression searches, and it will tear through thousands of huge files in a very short time. I've used it on big folders full of files. Looking into it, it's written in Rust and has a special implementation of regular expressions and a special way of dealing with file opening that speeds it up, from what I understand. Very quick. All right, so that is kind of the terminal tools I use to move around and do stuff as I work on coding through the day. Last thing before I wrap up, I just wanted to show some funny stuff, and this is stuff you usually see on most people's Hyprland setup that I do have installed. So just some fun stuff. First one is fast fetch or NeoFetch, and that just shows, if I type that at the terminal, it just shows a bunch of information about my system. So it'll show what OS I'm running. I have 2 displays, and using Kitty. This is my graphics card. It's pretty old, huh? Yeah, how much memory I have in here, all that stuff. So that's just for fun. It's not terribly useful. Next one is a program called Kava. This is run a lot better in a small window. So let me show you with a small window. And what that does is if we run Kava, it will show a little EQ with everything going on. Oh, wrong button. On the video card. So I need to open up some, or sorry, on the audio card. So I need to play something with some music. So let's just find something on YouTube, and hopefully won't get any strikes for this or whatever. But here we go. So if I play some music, I'm again getting lost in my workspaces here. Just have a lot going on. It'll show that little the EQ there. So just a fun thing. Okay. Sorry, I have a lot with OBS being open and all. Alright, so last thing, just another funny program most people seem to have installed and show and play with a lot on these, and that is C Matrix, which is just a funny program that we'll do that one full screen actually. It's kind of funny. Just does this on your screen. So that's kind of funny too. If you want to put a bunch of funny stuff on your screen while you're working, you can do that too. So we can do that and Kava, and then have that going and some stuff. But anyway, that's just silliness. That was just to show that. But anyway, I hope some of that was interesting, but just showing you kind of how my normal work environment is set up, and how I work every day. And hopefully that was an interesting video, and it was relatively unscripted as usual. Hopefully I didn't meander or get too boring too much during this video. But if you want me to talk about any more of this stuff, let me know. Otherwise, if you like, you should check out Hyprland, and you should check out NeoVim, and you should check out some of these things if you want a similar setup. And that's going to be it for this video. All right, thanks. As always, like, subscribe, click on the bell if you want to get the alerts when I make new videos. Thanks.